Pajashig, welcome. Welcome to unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin territory. And welcome to our Azejicigan lecture series. Tonight we're going to hear from Raven Two Feathers, Monagar, and Rose Stiffarm, and we're going to talk about Indigenous art and internet and digital stuff and using VR, and that's the technical term. So I'd like to welcome you all. Manik Manach Indigenous, Algonquin from Barrier Lake and Dojaba, and I'll start with a brief opening. Kachimigwich Jemnido, thank you, Creator. Thank you for the water, for the plants, for the trees, for the ones who fly, for the ones who swim, for the ones who crawl, for the furred, for the feathered, for the four-legged, and for the two-legged. And thank you for bringing us all together today with open hearts, with open minds. Help us to see truth and help us to hear beauty and help us to work together to learn about our artistic expressions, share with each other our hopes and our dreams, and be kind and compassionate and have a wonderful conversation. Kachimigwich, 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 Kachimigwich. So for starters, I'd like to, I'll introduce first, well, I'll turn it over to Monagar and ask her if she would please introduce herself and her work, and we'll get the conversation started. Miigwech.
Sego sewa gwego, nyawa Monique. Thank you, Monique. You're gonna grisalas yongyats. Akwasasni gawanoge goa taknagale. Waxkalewage. So I am Monagar on the internet. I'm from Akwesasne and I sit with Bear Clan. And I'll show you, I'm going to share my screen and show you what I've been up to. Let's see. Is this one? I think so. Share sound. Okay. Where's my screen? Okay. So this is what I'm working on right now. This is one of my big projects, is mohawklanguage.ca. And I have a really small team of people I work with. So I work with other developers, fluent speakers in Kanegeha dialects. And a lot of them are contractors, and I do all of I'm doing this art, like this character here, the 3D design. I design it in Daz Studio, and then I use an iPhone and I do face motion capture to animate these characters to speak our language. And when I'm doing it with an eye on making sure it's reusable for future projects. And you can see all of that on that website. And there's a link there too. How come I keep showing that? And this character, I called her Wanika Lagu. And that's a loose translation is Monica of the Forest. And I even put her on Instagram, and sometimes I have her like visit friends, and we'll do like pictures of her visiting friends, and it's just having fun with it. And here's another 3D character. And I designed these for my all of my XR projects. I can, again, like everything I do, I can reuse it in things like virtual reality, augmented reality, 360, and flat films. And so here's a bunch of links with all the stuff I do. So most of the time, even though I'm like an administrator for mohawklanguage.ca, I'm also doing the art and the software engineering and stuff like that. But I will show you some of the 3D art that I do. Like this I designed for, again, to use in VR and films and everything. It's a 3D forest. And I designed this one in Tilt Brush. And if it takes too long to load, I'm gonna get out of here and just, you guys can find it. Yeah, I don't wanna have everyone sit. So I just scroll through here, like these are all 3D. It's just different 3D art that I designed for different projects. I even have like octopus, jellyfish, and it really depends on the story we're telling. I have like turtles under the water. you name it. I even have like a disco dance floor with a hot, what do you call it? A yam or a sweet potato that dances around. It's right here. So it depends on the story that we're working on. I just designed this and then we can reuse it like in VR, AR and everything. This one here is one of my favorites. It's a sky dome. I use it quite a bit in different things. And this one here is the grasslands. I use that quite a bit too, because this one, all of this is, I wonder if this one might load because it's kind of small. Because they're 3D environments, the way I do it is that even on a web browser, if the audience, like later on, if you look in there, you can zoom in and out of the environment. So you're surrounded by the whole 3D environment, which is very different from looking at it on a flat screen. And then find it back up here to the presentation. So I am doing more like a show and tell of what I've been up to. This one right here, Vimeo is holding all of the language animations that we've been doing. And this one too, we're getting ready to bring in new speakers so right now what's on there, it's all me speaking, but we're bringing in male speakers, older speakers, and all different speakers to, so we have different voices on all the characters. And I'll give it time to load, but we'll go back over here while it's loading. What else can I show you here? YouTube might. The other thing that I do with all this 3D art that's really cool, because a lot of it, like everything I'm doing, I'm trying to make sure it's reusable and accessible. And with a lot of 3D art, I've actually been making, like, I'll take a screenshot, even inside Tilt Brush or Blender or whatever I'm using, and then I put it on things like sneakers and leggings and dresses. Like I even have all these A-line dresses that it has all this different like stuff that I draw in 3D. This one was a lot of fun to make. Make sure it's not too loud. And this is a 3D environment you can go into. It has audio reactive light. And a lot of symbology where I'm from. So you guys can see that on your own. Let me go back here where the links are. The other one, the big one that gets the most attention though, this Ungwahunweneha AI, that started in the 1990s and it's still going on now. And this is, boy, I could talk a whole week about it. But it is software, it's a bot, it's actually a whole bunch of chat bots. And it takes any kind of input nowadays. So it'll take text input, audio input, and it outputs. And the way I built it is that it will output very loose translations in Guanigeha. I actually did a whole bunch that the public hasn't seen with all different languages. But that one I did not put to the public because I don't feel like it's, that's not my place to do that because they're not languages from where I'm from. And the thing with those bots too, they go into VR. I haven't done anything with augmented reality with it, but we could technically. But this year I'm working on just getting it where more Ungwahumwe people, Indigenous people know about the work so that they can collaborate with me in a way where they still have ownership and control over their own languages, their own culture, things like that. And they can just reuse what I already built. And there's my contact info, and there's my favorite sky dome, and that's all I have to share right now. So let me stop sharing. Okay. Off to the next person.
Thank you, Miigwech. Okay, I'm trying to desperately start my video. We had a question in the Q&A about getting the links. And if you if you can share that with us, then we'll put it up. Either, I don't know if we can put it up during the webinar, but definitely after
Okay.
on the ICMI website or on the dark. But we'll make sure
Alright.
to share it. Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Kachima Gwitch. I have so many questions. Do you put some of your, okay, oh wait, well, wait till the end. I hope I remember. Okay. I'm also excited to hear from Raven Two Feathers and see what he's been up to. So what have you been up to, Raven?
Well, besides some other projects that I've been also plugging away on, I'm traditionally a filmmaker, or at least that's where I got my start. And I've recently, since around 2016, been dabbling in VR. And so a lot of my focus from switching, or at least seeing what I get from VR that I don't get from film, is really that world view and being able to fully immerse someone in VR and allow them to take their own steps in the world that they're in. And so some of that immersion that I do is focused on a lot of my life experiences, or a lot of things that I wish could come about in my lifetime, or things that I imagine. And so some of that is focused around being trans, having top surgery. And that was actually my first official VR piece that I did, was this, was the drive to top surgery for me. I'm not going to share the sound for it, but I am going to share the general look of the piece. And it's just me and my grandma, and my mom is in the background. And what does it mean to essentially be on a fly on the wall and be able to just sit here as we're taking this very big drive to a big surgery that I'm taking, or undertook. And so it became this place where you can look at whoever you want to look at. You can see the things that we're commenting on as we drive down there. And it became a slice of life, along with like the build up to who I am, and to something that was very, very important to me, being able to more fully express who I am through my body. And so that's really where my original drive was, drive, to be able to share that sort of experience with people. Because a lot of my work, a lot of the work that I'd seen was, okay, we start at home and then we cut to the surgery office. But what happens in between, and how to bring someone into my world and into that specific point in my life. And so that really got me to a point where I realized I could do this, and that there was so much overlap with film and VR and live action and animation and all of these things that I'd been interested in, game development too, but had not had the confidence or exposure in how to go about that process. And so you'll hear from Rose Stiffarm on her piece, but I decided to embark upon a piece with the Immersion Lab 2, which was essentially a VR pitch development with the NFB. And so I developed a piece that essentially revolves around reimagining what Seattle looks like, as I'm based in Seattle. And so that ended up being a mix of recognizing the amount of work it takes to care for plant relatives, as well as the integration of language in that caring for place, land, and the beings who are inhabiting it. So I have this piece called Tulal Tudi Tuhak. I am not Coast Salish, FYI, but I did consult the Puyallup tribe language department. So a lot of this is also about the collaboration between nations and beings in a place. And so this was really where my Indigenous futurism really kicked in. It's always been something that I'd thought about when I was younger. A lot of what if situations ran through my head. But now realizing how much we need to continue forward as opposed to the inability to go back is, yeah, it's been integral to what I'm doing. So what else about this piece? It taught me a lot about plants and about being able to get down into the dirt, so to speak, and recognize the contributions, because plants are so incredibly valuable to our health, our well-being, such incredible medicine that they bring. And so being able to take the time to raise and care for them and help them spread their seeds in this piece, along with the integration of what does it look like to be in a technologically sustainable world, is where this VR piece is aiming. This is just a trailer that we developed. It has a lot of work to go, a lot of work to be done on it, but the pieces are starting to fall into place. And so I'm really happy with this reimagining and this focus. And something that someone had brought up on a previous interview I did was about how it seems so contradictory to have have this talk about plants in such a mechanical and such a technologically and metal heavy world that is VR and that is computers and everything that runs VR. And so I find it interesting that I'm trying to find ways to bring the world back into back into the beings that are powering our machines and are making it possible for us to bring these worlds to life. I think I'll leave it there.
Beautiful work. Absolutely gorgeous. I love that piece. And the other piece is so personal, and yet it's something we can all relate to. You know, you're right, it's a slice of life. We've all been in those car rides where you're heading towards something life-changing. And yet in the moment it's just mundane. It's mundane. Is that right? Mundane, the way you say that? Yeah. It's just like here we are, la la la. And yet any minute it's just going to be life-changing. But it's in those moments before, when it's still just sitting in the car, going by, looking at stuff, with somebody else. So thank you. Yeah.
That piece is actually like, there's no cuts in the piece at all. I had the possibility of cutting out those moments of pause, but the fact that the piece is 11 minutes long, it's just fine how it is. And those pauses, I've heard, add so much more to what it means to be in that space. And so I think that even just with VR in general, it gives us time to pause and reflect on things that I feel would end up on the cutting room floor in film.
Yeah, and to be comfortable with that. Excuse me, it's like being comfortable with that relationship, you know, and that you're there with your grandmother, you know, and we've been there. I've been there with my son and with my parents, where you're just in the car and there are those pauses, you know. Miigwech, thank you. I've got a bunch of questions. I'm going to wait till the end, and then I'll have a bunch more with Rose, I'm sure. So I'd like to hear, I'm really interested and excited to hear from Rose Stiffarm to find out what you've been doing lately. Everybody's been doing really cool stuff lately.
Can you see my screen? Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Wait. Before I start showing it, I'm just gonna introduce myself briefly. Oki, my name is Rose Stiffarm. I'm born and raised in Suquamish, Duwamish territory, also known as Seattle, Washington, but that's not where I'm from. My mom's mom was Siksika. My mom's dad was Cowichan and Saanich from Vancouver Island, and my dad was Grobant and Assiniboine. And I went to school in Vancouver. I went to Capilano University in North Vancouver, and I took the Indigenous Independent Digital Film program, and I got my diploma. And then I took the cinematography for film and video program, and I got my certificate. And then I took the motion picture arts bachelor degree program. And so currently I'm based in Kyokyage, also known as Montreal. And I'm working on my master's in film studies at Concordia. And so I also am a member of the Directors Guild of Canada. I work in film as a cinematographer and director of photography, producer, and I also like to learn more about VR, AR, and XR technology. I'm interested in teaching filmmaking, and I'm hoping to learn more about AR and VR so that I can share some of that knowledge too. So that's a little bit about me. And so what I'm going to show you is the, I was, as Raven mentioned, I was a part of the Open Immersion Lab through the NFB Toronto and in partnership with the Imaginative Film Festival. And so that was a really cool project to be a part of. I got to learn more about AR and VR and XR, and I learned how to formulate a pitch for this project. And so what I'm going to show you is the pitch. And so the pitch video is kind of like the end result project from that immersion lab. But for basically what this is to be is to basically tell everyone, I'm looking for money so that I can make this thing. And so this is the video. And so the approach that I took for this pitch was a bit more abstract, I guess, or a bit more experimental in a sense. And so it's more of a feeling that I want you to get from this experience. And so that's kind of something I'm playing with. So I'm just gonna play it now, and we can talk more about it after.
We can, we will, we are strong together. We can, we will, we are strong together. We can, we will, we are strong together.
If I wear to take back and that is you will be too far gone to nothing on charging. Drunk in the fair, long they say for I came back over fighting them today.
Don't got much time, don't got much time left, no,
Give it back, or we'll take it back. Give it back, or we'll take it back. Give it back, or we'll take it back. Give it back, or we'll take it back.
Fighting for our freedom is the only way we'll live. There's never been justice on stolen land. This needs to be the year the revolution began. There's never been justice on stolen land. This needs to be the year the revolution began. Was this the year the revolution began? Time will tell, time will tell.
When we broke our coppers at the legislature building and the parliament building here in Canada, we broke a spell of false dominance and control. The true custodians of Mother Earth, we the tribal people have standing, and it is up to the people to uphold justice. That means that the law enforcement and the military first responsibility is to protect the tribal people of this land. And we want to remind you, American and Canadian citizens, that you are still our guests here, and we are still your hosts. Gayla Kessler. Gayla Kessler.
We shall overcome. We can, we will. We are strong together. 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 We can, we will. We are strong together.
So that's the idea. That's the feel of the piece. The kind of tone I was going for, well, for this particular project, what the NFB did was they called for decolonial projects. And so that was more or less the catalyst for the idea. And so for me, I wanted to take the feelings of those songs that I used to imagine a future. And so part of this imagined future is looking at a multi-generational home. It's looking at people coming together and sharing their resources and not having capitalism as we know it today. And like when you're actually going through this world in this home, the home is a bit more, I don't know, like calm in a sense. And so like, I know in the house that I grew up in, like everybody had like a TV and radio and like all sorts of different sounds going on and multiple radios and TVs going on. And so for me, I just feel like sometimes it's like we can't be in quiet because it almost feels eerie, or I don't know, there's something about not being able to sit in silence. And so I like to think in the future that we have that ability and that we've been working on healing our traumas. And so I remember being really, I don't know, questioned about what the technology looks like and in the 50 years from the future. And like, it could have been, it didn't necessarily need to be in the future, but I wanted to make it in the future. And so what they were more so interested in was decolonial narratives. And so for me, it was important to acknowledge that like, if if and when we get our land back, it's also important for us to focus on our own personal healing journeys first before we can really be thinking about creating new technologies, so that we can really know ourselves, so that we're not just recklessly creating things and just maybe potentially even destroying things. And so mindfulness is a big part of what I think of for the future. And so kind of interesting is I'm at Concordia right now, and one of my classes is in the computational design program. And one of the things they're talking about is they're imagining the future. And so it's been some really interesting conversations in that class. But yeah, we have had different talks about utopian futures, dystopian futures, and like, I don't know, like also just things anywhere in between and beyond that. And so, yeah, like Native people in the future, it's like when I remember growing up and not really seeing any Native people in any futuristic films. And it's just like, the underlying tone was that we're all gone. And I don't think that, you know, we're still here. I'm still here. These folks here on the panel are still here. And so I think that's why, one of the reasons why it's important for Indigenous people to be creating our own images, to be creating our own media, to be creating our own news, to creating our own video games, to creating our own curriculums and schools and so much more. And so that's like, there's a lot of the work that we do as an Indigenous artist, and it's like, oh, we shouldn't have to do that. And it's like, no, we shouldn't have to do that. But also people probably shouldn't have come here and like oppressed us, but now we have to do all the work to work and heal from that. And so part of that is working more than just your job, but also working as a mentor, so you can help train the next future generation and be thinking of the different generations coming up behind you. And so, you know, looking back, but also looking forward. And so keeping that perspective in balance. But yeah, I'm open to questions.
That was amazing. Wow, it's gorgeous. I've seen it a few times and I love it every time. That idea of being able to go through the house and speak to the different relatives and take on these different activities, and the victory day. That is so hopeful. You know, I love it. Why not? Why not? Like, you know, for me, I think my Indigenous futurism would be a bit of a dystopia, but you know, like I don't have to think that way. There's a hopeful side, and there's a way of looking at life and future where you're right. We're all still here, and our kids are here, and you know, it's being passed on to the next generations, and there's more of them now than ever. You know, so it's fantastic. Oh, and Rose, when you were talking about funding, and I've asked our technical wizard to put this up. Digital Now. Canada Council has just announced a fund called Digital Now. And there it is. Look at that. That's just so cool. And the deadline, I think was March 31st. And it's for the creation of digital works. And they never have a creation grant like this is totally new. So, and I've just also heard that with the creating, knowing, and sharing, they've just been given an extra bunch of money. So if you look at Canada Council under Creative Knowing and Sharing, and you look under Canada Council for, there it is, Funding Strategies and the Digital Now, that's for creation. So maybe it'll help. I don't know if it will, but
I'll look into it, yeah. And if it's not eligible for me, I'll make sure to send it out to some other folks so that people can take advantage. And
right on.
on.
It should be.
Yeah.
It should be. It's open to artists. It's open to artists. So, you know, and it's CKS, which are Canada Councils. They're not like other councils but you've had the professional training. So it's not like, you know, some of us, myself included, are self-taught. And in some councils, it's like, well, if you're self-taught, you got to have professional training, you know, as opposed to recognizing that our communities are full of people who, you know, train us and mentor us and, you know.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, I went through the Indigenous Matriarch Lab in Vancouver, the Im4 Lab that Loretta Todd was starting to put together. And so I forgot to mention, I shot a 360 video with them, not this past January, but the January before. Excellent. And so that was a really cool project to be a part of. And excellent. So just like learning how to film in 360, because like I've learned how to film like this, but then when you're filming in 360, it's like all of this, like everything. Like it's just like I remember trying to like set up a scene so it was like you were sitting with me at a cafe table, and like I had like the camera on a little monopod, and then you could see what I was trying to hide when I was looking at the footage later, and I was like, oh, I was trying to hide my purse was propping up the camera, and so I was like, oh, like I wanted to hide that, but it's a 360 camera and it's within the field of view, so okay, well that's me learning about shooting in 360, but like even editing in 360, there's commonalities, but it is a lot more tricky in terms of just navigating the plane that you're on and all of that. So that was a cool thing to be able to learn from that particular program. It was a weekend, or it was just a couple days workshop, but I learned a lot in a short amount of time. And they keep putting on more workshops. So if there's anyone watching, sometimes they host like panel events or workshops or other things. And so, yeah, just if you haven't heard of them, check them out. Im4 Indigenous Nature 4 Lab.
Right on. And the Capilano program you were in, the Indigenous filmmaking program. What year was that?
Oh my gosh, I lived at Capilano for 6 years straight. I first took the Indigenous film program, and I started that in 2010 and graduated in 2012. And then I took the cinematography program, and that was a year long, and I started that in 2013 and 2014. And then after that, I used those two credentials to ladder into the motion picture arts bachelor degree program. So I entered as third year, and so I was able to graduate from that program in 2016. And so, yeah, it's quite the academic journey I've been on, but I've also, I like to keep busy in film, and I've done camera union day calls and worked on like some Hallmark Christmas movie kind of things. And I did a a couple weeks working on a series of unfortunate events. That was pretty cool for the camera training. And so, but I really want to try putting myself out there more as a cinematographer and director of photography. I'm really, I don't know, nervous about getting, like I am a good assistant. Like I will look after you if I'm your assistant, but I don't, one thing I heard when I was working in Vancouver was not about anyone I knew, but it was these two operators and like a higher level camera assistant. And they're like, oh yeah, so-and-so is a good assistant. I think I'll keep them there. And I'm just like, oh, they would do that. And I'm just like, oh, and I'm like, okay, be good as an assistant, but don't be too good because you're gonna get stuck there. And so
good to know.
I was like, mental no, okay, like don't wait for the chance. You have to make the chance. And so it's been an interesting journey for me, like working in film. I really like independent projects. Like independent voice is very important to me. Indigenous voice is very important to me. And so I'm really mindful about like whichever kind of projects I work on. And so I'm hoping in the future to be doing some work with one of my cousins and doing some work about language, but like that's still a bit of a longer ways out. But yeah, like different things happening.
Right on. That's fabulous. What about you guys, Raven? This can become more of a conversation here, so please unmute yourselves and jump right in. Have you been more self-taught? Has this been, I mean, you've both worked on, I know, some pretty impressive projects. How has the journey been for you guys? And feel free to jump right in. T and Bannock, go ahead. Okay, I'm gonna pick one.
Okay.
The journey.
Pardon?
Go ahead.
Okay. For as far as film, I've been in film since 7th grade.
Wow.
And been taking film classes ever since then, up into getting my BFA in film production back in 2018. And then I've been working in film and been mentored by a few different folks, both in huge sets and indie sets. Got an Emmy in high school, worked on an HBO set, worked on an indie movie.
Wait, what's the Emmy? What was the? what
Yeah,
does it
I'm like,
say?
You're
wait,
like, don't
It's
skip
like-
over that.
Yeah, what are you doing?
for that little, just that little Emmy.
You know.
Which is also right there, at least the
Oh yeah.
that little bit.
Yeah.
That was a student Emmy for I was doing a documentary on a geology program that brings high school students down every summer to the continental US to study different geological formations and really get them interested in STEM fields. So that was really interesting to learn about how these high school students were being affected by learning about geology and various land-based formations. So yeah, that was my student Emmy in high school. Oh, and I'm gonna jump way over to VR. First time I ever had any interaction with VR was at Tracy Rector, who's a mentor of both me and Rose, took me to the SIF X, which was back in 2016, and it was essentially a film festival, but VR focused, or XR focused actually. So they had a whole bunch of different talks, plenty of devices that you could use to view VR. So it was really interesting to see film festival format, but for XR content. And so that really kicked off me wanting to get involved in VR. So of course, it's not that old of a medium. And so they're not starting to charge us for learning how to properly do something. And so I think that my application of formal filmmaking training and just knowing how to work with technology really helped me get into doing VR. And speaking of getting into doing VR, I have this little Ricoh Theta. It's a great small camera, relatively cheap compared to some of the more expensive stuff that they have out there. But it's pretty much what I use if I'm shooting live action to do anything. And this is what I shot that first piece on that.
Oh yeah, with your grandma. How was it working with your grandmother?
It was good. It was really good. So I had tested this beforehand so that I'd be able to mount it to the top of her car. If I scroll up on that one,
Was it on the inside? I hope.
Yes. I couldn't imagine if it wasn't on the inside.
It's got a built-in mic?
Yes, it does. But I also did a little quick, I don't remember when I did the sync sound, but I synced it with a microphone, sort of hard to see. There we go. There's the mic.
Oh, okay.
The mount for it. And you can see that there's a little bit of, it didn't quite get sewn together properly there, but it's in a place that doesn't really matter. So,
yeah.
And then down here, you'll see the little Tascam that I have here for recording extra audio wrapped in a towel. But no one's going to this. It's all shiny. It's all sort of metal. So no one's really going to be looking down there, and there's not much that you would look at here. So, it's about hiding the little things. And actually, let me bring up in my in the other piece as well that came to mind when Rose was talking about hiding. Let's see. So I'm essentially right behind here. I am behind this big orange barrel. And I think that's one of the most, just trying to build in where you're going to hide or where you're going to crop yourself out is probably one of the biggest things to keep in mind when you're doing 360 video. So you just crouch behind there, you hit start on the phone because this one works by syncing up to your phone. or you can press the little button on it. But yeah, I just crouch behind there for however long I need to get the shot for and just go.
Fantastic.
But right, to answer your question, it was really good working with my grandma. Because of film and because of wanting to make sure that you cover your butt, I wanted to at least get their verbal permission for filming all of this. And they were like, yeah, absolutely, it's all good. And so I don't think I've shown her the piece, but yeah, it's just really good. And even more so, she wanted to make sure I was all good with my top surgery. So it was overall a really good experience.
That's fantastic. I love Grams. They're great. And Monica, you've had a lot of experience with different equipment, and you look young, but you've had a journey.
Well, there's camera filters too, things. Yeah, my journey has definitely been really feral and wild. Yeah, so like my grandparents raised me in St. Regis in the early 70s. I was forcefully, and St. Regis is a reservation, then I was forcefully removed to go live with white people. And they had, so my grandparents, like we still had an outhouse. We didn't even have like the things that you take for granted, you know? So I'm forcefully taken out of there and I go into this home where they have like excessive 4 cars in a driveway, all kinds of money, but they don't like natives, you know? So I'm constantly my whole life in this like duality, I guess. But in that house with the non-natives, they always had computers. They had a Tandy TRS-80. We were the only people to have them around in the 70s. And he was a communication specialist, a Marine. So I would just watch quietly because I was just a little kid. They didn't even know. And my first books I was reading was his computer programming books. And that's when I built my very first AI bot, you know, in the 70s. And that's how my journey started. But growing up like that, I was always pushing back on the stuff that I knew was not cool, like towards native people. Even though I look like a white lady, there's things that are not cool that people say around me. And I've just never been soft, like put up with it. So I was constantly getting in, you know, fights, and it was not easy, to the point where it was so deadly violent for me that I was a homeless person by the time I was 14. And I looked like I was 10 years old. So then, you know, I'm like going back and forth in this really wild life, like, because my grandfather was still alive. He was awesome. He has the most impact on everything I do with this tech. And I did not even know at the time he is actually a mush hole survivor, because he would always just show me how to survive and navigate all this racism in every way you can imagine, like with your mind. And I always had that freedom as a human being, like, people that are not native or not from there, like they would get really upset, but like I was literally on my own, like out on the streets at like 14. So I'm navigating, and what I chose to do, I'd spend most of my time in the library reading, because I wanted to read at that time, like how to like, number one, why were people treating me the way they were? And number two is all those computers and machines and even cars, like motors. I like taking all that stuff apart, you know, all that stuff that I'm not supposed to do. So I actually wasn't even going to school for a while. I just had a really wild, feral life. Even Syracuse University, I remember sneaking into a class there when I was like probably 15. The professor knew I was sneaking in there, and he just would leave me alone. So I was kind of not a nice person either, like, because that's what protected me. Like, surviving that kind of life, you cannot be nice and friendly. Like, I was kind of mean, and it helped me survive. And then, long story short, by the time the 90s came, 96, I got my first job in tech, because I was, you know, I'm good at this stuff. But then I seen in the 90s all this stuff like what Rose and Raven bring up, and like all of our people bring up everywhere across America. It's like, I had, like, it's hard to explain, but I could see how it was causing a lot of damage, like to people, our minds, and the environment. And especially now that I'm in VR. So I got into VR by the time 2012. I'm one of the first Kickstarter funders for Oculus. So I have like all the first kits that they have. And the reason why I went into that is I thought, like, this is horrible being chained to these machines and coding all the time. You get your hunchback and sickly, and you
Mm.
even lose your social skills. And it was just so exploitive of human beings and the environment. So when VR came along, I was like, wow, what a great way to get off these machines. But now, this year especially, I was like wishing for the greatest graphic cards, like I don't know, it's RTX 8000. And then I'm looking at it's like only $50,000 for this setup. And I'm like, but I'll come up with the sweetest Mohawk language animations you'll ever see. But then I'm like, holy crap, I'll be using more energy than a whole country and like just to make like a little animation. Like, so now I'm going backwards thanks to my grandfather and thinking about, look at all the neat things we built in the 90s, even the 1970s. Why can't I do like that MacGyverish stuff and reuse what I already have and stop being such a consumer and destroying everything around me so I can have a good time? So that's where I'm at right now. That's my adventure.
Wow. So what would you, like when you're looking at that camera, what kind of thing would you recommend if we're, I mean, I know I got the, what is it, the little
Oh.
Sony, the little 4K one, like it's small, but it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
I don't even know how to use it. I mean, I'm the one who created all the video workshops so I could take them, but
Mhm.
ended up in the kitchen making the food while the workshops were going on, you know? So, I mean, it's only been by osmosis or running in at the end and going, okay, you know, so what did we learn?
I think it's more like do the best you can with what you have to work with. If you only got a phone, use that. Whatever you've got to work with, because you know you have the vision. We don't really have to keep consuming the latest and greatest. It's fun to get the latest and greatest, but we don't have to do that.
That's the kind of thing, especially now, because we're also virtual, right? We really, you know, I mean, I couldn't visit. I went to Toronto recently and I had a box of presents for my cousin for Easter and for her birthday and stuff. And I just left it on her porch and rang the doorbell and ran away because of fear, right? For COVID. And so if we're not getting together, and I don't know when that's going to end, maybe tomorrow, maybe this summer, I hope, because I have projects where I'm supposed to do land-based stuff, but who knows?
Yeah.
You know?
I think too, we have enough, like we have the internet to connect with each other, is like definitely keep communicating with each other, because you might find people that can share their resources. Like, for example, I do have extra equipment and I do have things that we do to sanitize. Like I have an ozone machine because even before COVID, when I'm traveling, I still like really protect myself because I grew up with a lot of health problems. So I think just keep the communications up, ask each other, like, what are you doing? And oh, by the way, do you have an extra VR device that you're not using? Because I know I do.
Wow.
You know, even
That's
though they're going to
amazing.
be, I know they're going to be obsolete soon, but that makes me even more want to, it brings out my hacker side where I'm like, oh, I want to hack this and just work around them trying to close off the wall on us. Plus Apple's coming out with new stuff soon.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got a whole bunch of old Apples, iMacs, and I've lent them out twice to a couple of people, and both times, because they can't be upgraded, they've been basically useless. And that makes
So
me
you
mad because I've got at least 10 of these things. So how do we use them? How do we, you know?
I bet you could reuse them to make like little, you know what I want to really do next for a big project is a local, I think they call it a mesh network, where it's only in your reservation, like only in your community and not to the rest of the internet. And you could use all that old equipment and it's all connected. I think it's called a mesh network. So that you have, because for us, we have speakers that help us. Some of them, this is awful. They've asked me to go see them in person. And I'm like, because you know they're not seeing anybody and it hurts. I'm like, I can't go near you because I don't want to,
What if I'm a carrier?
a super spreader. Yeah, so I'm thinking like a mesh network where we can still communicate with each other in our language and stuff, because there's stuff they want to talk about, but they don't want to put it out on the internet.
Yes.
With good reason.
With good reason. What about you guys, Rose, Raven? Have you got kind of those kind of projects that are, it's in response to COVID, really? Like, do you have little like things that that you'd like to work on?
Well, just like I'm working on my master's, but something I keep hoping to like make some time for is like creating a short film based in my apartment, but that would be just more kind of like regular film style and not necessarily like 360, because I don't have a 360 camera. I don't have like, I have an iPhone, but it's like an iPhone 5S, and so it's like very old at this point and still kicking gratefully, but it's just like it costs money to upgrade, and like I really
Yeah.
don't like this thing about technology where we have to keep buying the latest and greatest. How come this thing, you know, it works? How come I can't keep making things on? I don't know.
Exactly.
And so
Can you use it as a 360? I mean, can you shoot that way? Is there a way to shoot, like just kind of pan in a circle? I don't know. I'm
well,
making it
at
up.
this point, I've also had this phone for a very, very long time, and I can only take a limited amount of pictures on it.
Of
Because there's
course.
already an insane amount of storage on it, like that's being filled and utilized. And so I don't know, like something I'm trying to do in the near future is get my hands on more cameras and lights and technology, but all of this technology gets expensive, and I live alone, and
Yeah.
so like living alone is expensive, and
Yeah.
maybe I would consider having a roommate if it wasn't a pandemic, but then it comes into like, oh, where have you been? And oh, you seen somebody? Who did they see? And then so it's just like,
Yeah.
it's like way less stress for me to just hunker down and have my own like office space in my apartment, and like
Mhm.
workout space too, because I guess they did just reopen gyms in Quebec, but like I don't know, like I'm a little reluctant to want to go to a public gym right now, so
You
I'll
know,
keep
my
doing
son's going.
Pilates online.
Yeah, my son's like, oh, I get up really early and I go to the gym and I'm going to work, and I'm like, wow, like that's amazing. I never got up early when I was your age, but like, I don't like getting up early now. Thing about pandemic, I don't take meetings before 11 o'clock.
Yeah, it's different. Like I have normally like I'm used to like working on set or like working in like a production office type of environment, or like working on campus at school, and so working from home has just been like, what, work from home? Like I have dishes to clean. You mean do dishes? And I'm just like, it's hard for me to like get into like a working brain mode when I'm at home.
Yeah.
And so that's
Yeah.
been something I've been really like fighting with this pandemic this whole year. And so part of it, I did go on like a bit of a trip for some personal errands and business, and
Yeah.
it was really
You
stressful
gotta.
to like be working from home when I was not at home. And so now I'm at home, and I have like my TV is set up as my Zoom monitor, and I have my laptop right next to it, and it's attached with a cable, and I went and got some money and bought a little webcam, so like I put that on top of the TV. And it just so happened when the NFB was moving, they were getting rid of a bunch of stuff, and so I found some lights in a garbage, and so these lights
Oh,
I've
nice.
put above my TV and like to the side of it. So it's a lot of meetings right now. And so like for me at this time, like I'm mostly prioritizing my master's, which is mostly a lot of reading and watching films and talking about films. And like for the assignments that are due, it's they really want to try and switch it up. And so they try and have us do things like podcasts and like video essays. And so I'm still kind of like loosely like working in like a semi-related area, but it is still kind of like new for me. Like I've never made a podcast before, but that's something I've been doing in my program.
Yeah.
And so they're not necessarily teaching me how to do it. It's still me like YouTubing, like, how do I do this? Blah, blah, blah. But like, at least now at this point, like I'm familiar with Adobe Premiere. So, I mean, I probably could be learning another like software to edit the audio, but like I'm more of a lights and cameras kind of gal and less of a mics and like editing software kind of gal. But I'm
Yeah.
trying to work on those things during the pandemic. And so I'm just trying to like, I don't know, cover my basics and then growing from there. And so so for me, like I've noticed like there's been a lot of times where like all of us here have seen a movie, and there's like hundreds of people involved usually in like a movie, and like the credits, they can go on for a long time if there's a lot of CGI or special effects involved. And so even if it's a short film, it's still, you know, a decent handful of people. And I noticed that I miss out on a lot of work because people want me to be the writer, director, producer, cinematographer, editor, sound person, blah, 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 blah. And like, there are people who can do that, but I love working in a team. And that's been like I want to be the director or of photography, and then that person can be the director, and then that person can be the writer, and then we'll put our heads together and come up with some really awesome. But I've been missing out on work. And then they also want you to do all those jobs and then have all the gear. Oh, do you have your camera, your laptop,
for the
and your
same
sound
price
gear, and your microphone,
Oh, yeah.
and your like video cards and hard drives, and I'm just like, I don't have that gear. I want to buy that gear. I need a job to buy that gear. It's not that I don't want to work to buy this gear. I just need to get the job so that I can get these other things. And so that's another reason why I've been so like into school, is because, well, at least I'm still like working on myself and like acquiring these things that I have access to, because like not everyone has access to school. Like, school is expensive, and like I've done the thing where I went and got some student loans. There's other support for my funding for school, but there's also a lot of student loans. And so it's just like, I'm still gonna have to pay those off later.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm like even pondering, I'm like, should I just do a fundraiser for all these things that people have just expect me to have now? And so I'm like, or should I launch a separate venture to pay for these things? And I've thought about like leaving film or pushing pause on film to go do things so that I can acquire these, I don't know, like crazy video software setup things. And I don't know, it's a lot to navigate being freelance. Like, I feel like my brain never gets turned off, and like I feel like it's the job that never ends. It's very rewarding, don't get me wrong, but it is also like constantly working, and like working when you didn't think you were going to be working, and people I know getting frustrated that you're always working. I'm like, I'm just trying to survive, yo.
Exactly. How about you, Raven? Have you got a project in the response to COVID?
Got too many projects. I'll pop a couple of the sound pieces that I've done. The first one, it just recently came out, Azejicigan. And that is essentially, it's me and one other person who were talking about what it means to be trans in relation to land, and like this relationality between trans bodies as land, as trans bodies, and that we still have effect on land anyways, and what does it mean to to carve out your own body and make changes to it. What does it mean to live in it, etc. And then the other piece is in collaboration with Chief Seattle Club. Essentially, this was a little earlier in the pandemic. I believe it was in June that it released, or July of 2020, about how folks who are experiencing homelessness are navigating all of this. So those are the two pieces that I've done in response to the pandemic, along with a lot of other, just work in making sure that people are okay, distributing resources, etc. I think that a lot of my work has been focused inward, because when we started hearing more and more about how we need to start wearing masks and all of that in March, I literally took a deep breath in and out and was like, okay, it's pretty much going to be a hibernation now. What do I and can I accomplish in that hibernation, and what do I need to really focus in on? And so I've been making a lot of changes in this tiny room that is my bedroom. Been paring down on things, starting to get into vintage fashion. Just trying to recognize where I can be more sustainable, even if I am buying things. And where I can invest my money that is not giant corporations. And so a lot of it has been seeing, like, even though I am a center point, it's obvious I'm obviously not the center point of the universe, but one of many. And how are people in my bubble even just virtually, and how do I reflect on and contribute something through my artwork, even if I can't interact physically with people.
Yeah.
So you see that in the VR piece and like in interacting with plants. I'm also doing a game. I'm slowly but surely doing that game about what it means to have all of these different experiences of gender and of realizing the interconnectedness of place, indigeneity, and gender into a video game of me essentially, or a small child who's just like hopping around in a cardboard box, how they explore the world. So yeah, that's what I've been
Fantastic.
working on, just trying to be more conscientious of things.
Yeah. Wow. How about you, Monica? Hey, you were saying about those prints you were making, the designs and whatnot. Okay, if you guys, there's two thoughts that have come to mind. I'm going to jump in here just for a sec. Sorry. One of them is ICMI has recently bought a fabric printer. So anything, anything, vintage things, anything that you design on the computer, we can print on fabric and leather or even birch bark. Like we can, when you think about all of that, say we're doing drum making workshops, people can design their own drums and then send it to us and we can print it on leather and then they can make their drums out of it. Or if they're doing birch bark, we can, and there's a way of doing small pieces even. Or fabric, any kind of fabric. So it's sort of a digital adjacent kind of thing. But and the other thing I'm thinking is, we're talking about all this old tech. We're talking about access to equipment and whatnot. And I'm wondering if there's some way, like, what if we found, like, created a repository? I have all these old, like these Sony HD cameras. They're huge and they take those great big sticks that are worth like $500 a piece or something. They're like $350, but but they're HD and I don't use them anymore because now I've got the little one, right? So isn't there, and ICMI is a charity. So if we get people to donate their old tech, I can give out charitable receipts to them and then we can have a library and people can, this is grandiose thinking, right? But, if we had some, like, I don't know. Do you think it's possible that we could have a library of equipment so that students and just people on budgets and whatnot would be able to access this equipment? Like, I'm wondering, and if we put that idea out there, I wonder if we'd get sponsors. Like, Monica, you're good at sponsors. I know you are.
You're like, I'd be happy to help because I'm always hearing people are looking for equipment. Like they're scrounging and they really need equipment.
And we're doing a lot of, another project I was supposed to do was bring in 10 people to show them how to digitize. Like seriously, digitize from analog, like cassette tape, reel to reel, VHS, and digitize. And it's just 2 cords, right? You plug it into the machine, you plug it into your computer, away you go. It's pretty, I recorded a sort of a how-to with the elder I work with, Albert. And like we figured if we could do it, then, anybody could do it. And I happen to know that our lovely tech, Anise from DARC, which is Digital Artist Resource Center, they've got all kinds of analog equipment, like beautiful VHS machines, and we were going to do all that. She is, yay! And like this could be something that there's analog digital tapes, the little digital mini DV tapes we all remember and love. So I'm wondering, like, is this something? Do you think that if we put it out there, people might be interested in? Like, if you had access to old tech or different tech, like, is this something that you would say? Oh, it would just be shipping like Amazon, right? You just ship it out and you sort of hopefully get it back. Hopefully.
Or if you don't get it back, I'm sure there's more people that will keep, because that's like a whole community right there. where they're sharing resources.
Yeah.
I know.
Little, handy cams, stuff like that. We've got a bunch of old handy cams. They're HD, they're little tiny ones, They don't have audio input though, so you have to do a secondary source, but, and the thing about VR is, and this is something I've had a conversation, with all of you guys about, the thing with, especially you, Mani, that how it can be actually like you want to keep your experiences short because of how dangerous it can be for people. They lose their sense of distance or spatial
recognition, how your brain processes the space.
So it's good that we can have these experiences and we can show people in this immersive way, but keeping it to a short duration, which still leaves all this other tech that we can use and maybe bring in, or maybe just to further explore, or I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think it's an interesting idea. Like I have a friend, one of my friends in Arizona, we were shooting a short film and also at some point we shot a music video, but we've been using like modern, like, this past couple years, cameras, but also like for some like extra dramatic scenes and moments, we were using VHS cameras. And so there's definitely like a need and like a want for older cameras. And I know there's a lot of people out there that, they're also environmentally conscious. So it's like they know they're not going to use it, but they're also not going to throw it away for a landfill. And they also kind of wonder about what actually really happens with the recycle parts places or whatever, and so it's just like if they heard about something like this idea, I think people would be interested in like donating or sharing their resources. And so like I remember when I went to Standing Rock, I was doing live feeds and I really was under the belief that if we had more cameras on the ground that it could change things. A little naive of a notion, but people still donated cameras though to the camp, but they they're a little bit older and stuff, but like maybe not necessarily for that kind of environment. But like I think if we're thinking about students and things like that, I think, and like other like indie filmmakers who it's just like they're using whatever budget they have just for the basics. And so it's just like, I don't know, like when you're doing indie films, it's just like every little bit helps, like just so much, like. And so I think, yeah, there's definitely environmentally conscious people out there who would be happy to help.
Like we even picked up a high 8. I don't think anybody's old enough to remember high 8 on this panel, but but yeah, just in case somebody had, they're little cassettes. They're like miniature VHS tapes. So that's
like I like collecting cameras, but it's just my collection is quite modest. But my friend is just like, I know she has at least 2 VHS recorders, and like me and her were talking and she was like, hey, like, remember mini DV tapes? And I was like, the zzz, like but the little
the noise it makes when you and we've got a bunch of those. We got a like
tape, and she's like
PD 170s.
Like, I think I know what you're talking about. And she's just like, if you ever see one at like a secondhand store, get it for me. And I'm like, okay. So just like we're at least those 2 weirdos like that are they're looking for older cameras, because I don't know, at least something I was learning in film school was like, if you're gonna be having things like VHS tapes, or even I have DVDs right here, but I have a DVD player, and then so you have to have the thing that you're capturing on, but you also have to have the way to actually play the thing. And so and I move around a lot, so it's hard for me to collect things, but but yeah, like I know that you can get a certain look by having cameras of that era. And so maybe in the future people are gonna need Monogar's headsets for a VR experience or something. I don't know, like
Yeah.
And let me guess, they're not going to do their research, so they'll combine the handy cams with the VR headsets and say it's the early 2000s.
Oh,
2020.
exactly.
Then they'll
Yeah.
call me up for tech support.
Wait a minute.
Along those lines, I think it's interesting to also, like, I've been thinking about what would VR look like but analog.
Ooh.
I know. You know what? This talk just got me thinking about how would I integrate. So when you do that, you record, you can put that in VR. You could like embed it in like say a TV or something in there. I've seen people do that. It's really neat actually.
Wow.
What's that one? Have you guys seen it? For me, like I sit down in a chair because in the VR experience, they like put you through this tunnel and and you see these little video clips like in little TVs and you're like, and if you're standing, it makes you want to throw up because it's kind of an old VR thing. So they didn't do a lot with the making sure you don't get sick part.
Okay. Oh my God.
So yeah,
that's
you can put old video in there. Like actually they've done it. It's interesting.
Wow.
You know what this is making me think of? It's a bit of a different tangent, but in my class, we were doing some reading about, it was something that Lawrence Cephalupton Paul wrote, and he was saying something about how he was, this is from his work in the 90s, I think, or from previous years. He was talking about how he was trying to draw ovoids in the program, in the software, and that it's just all grids and really boxy, and that it doesn't really, the program just doesn't take curves well, and it's actually a lot of like computer processing to get a curve and ovoids in that software. And so that kind of got me thinking about like, well, what would the technology be like if it wasn't based off of a grid? And so like, I'm not a programmer, but that's just where my mind went with that. And so
Yeah.
I had the same problem because I was trying to make a, actually I'll just share my screen real quick. I was trying to make a, it would have 3 sides and then a top piece. It's essentially like a little ball, but memory foam that you could use to carve things into. So essentially it's a memory ball. Designed this
Cool.
with the 7th Gen Tech Design workshop out of that Gahandawaks and Maze Longboat were running. Anyways, trying to get 3 sides to something as opposed to 4 was not fun.
Yeah.
It's so hard. So just wondering how to not have it centered on, on dual things.
Yeah. And I know the newer stuff is handling that better, but the old stuff we have right now is, as far as what your eye sees anyway, with the pixels, what do they call that? The resolution? That's not really the word I want though for this. It's those lenses in the VR thing.
The
Field of view, but the pixels, as far as I know, like they get distorted when you're coming over this way too. Is that what you're talking about, Raven?
I'm
So
just
when you're
talking
looking
about
at-
how the software handles triangular shapes or anything that doesn't have an isn't divisible by 2 essentially. So having 3 sides didn't help with keeping things mirrored correctly, and
Oh, okay. That makes
just
sense.
the design of it in Blender was a little bit more difficult.
I
So,
struggle in Blender still.
Yeah, kind of what I'm
Obviously the
thinking of
kitchen.
is like kind of like I've seen this in notebooks where they have grid notebooks and it's very like this, and then I've seen other notebooks where they have equidistant dots in it, and then you can create other shapes from that, but they're not necessarily in like that kind of order for the dots. They're kind of like more like that, I guess. They're like, like they're
offset.
isographic.
Yeah, they're offset, so they don't make squares in the same way that like the lined papers do. And so like even just having something like that be like the framework of these types of softwares could potentially maybe impact like how these computers process like a curve or an ovoid or a circle or like all of those things. Yeah, yeah. And so
Yeah.
so but it's kind of like another tangent from what I was saying earlier about how important it is for Indigenous people to be creating our own like content and media, but we also need to be the developers. We need to be developing the code and be developing the software and developing the hardware and software and all of it, and not just these experiences within it. And so
Yeah.
like if someone's watching this and they're thinking, what if, should I get into this? Like maybe if you're feeling interested, like you should consider it. Like I think it would be cool. I think it's important work to better reflect our realities and worldviews and perspectives, and so and philosophies. And so like ovoids are quite prominent in West Coast art. And so like I just thought it was funny he like Lawrence decided to throw in a bunch of ovoids in this like immersive space, just so you're like in a world of ovoids. And I'm like, that would be cool to like see.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I hope more people get involved.
I actually I only know isographic paper because I nearly went into engineering. And so that also makes me think about what it looks like to have native engineers. I mean, we're all engineering different things, but in that, yeah, just having that perspective of how do circles impact the way that we do things. And obviously it already does because of how things are designed to be on a graph or be straight, which haha ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, and I would love to see a future with, because like my career has been, software architect, engineer, where I've always been like the only woman on the team, the only Ungwahumwe, but that doesn't usually come up in those conversations because it's just all engineering talk. But I can just imagine like how wonderful my career would have been, more so if I was working with Ungwahumwe, where I did not have to like put up with the racism and all that stuff on top of the work, because I love the work. I love doing software and the architecture and all that. It's all this other stuff that comes along with it, the cultural clashing and the racism and all that stuff that makes it very exploitive, and where you can't really grow as a human being in that environment because it's a constant colonization of everything and even violent. So that will be wonderful to see more Ongwahume as engineers and in those roles, because wow, that would be an actually nice experience.
So I don't know anything about like software or how it's developed, but it's sounding like everything is like on a grid, whereas there could be software where everything's on isograph, so it's a circle. Is that possible? And then you can do like other like animations from it, or how does that work? How would that? I mean, it seems so embedded, like it seems so like building blocks of life and software.
Yeah, what I found is that there's no conversations like we're having right now. It's all top down heavy, white dominant male, very I'll just say it, I know it's not nice, a colonizer. This is the way it is. Be quiet under my thumb. This is the way it is. Take notes for me and get me some coffee. Like I've literally been.
Oh my God.
And you know how I am, so it doesn't turn out very well.
Well, you're blunt and you make people cry.
Yeah, basically, and so it turns into a short tech contract.
So
I want to see this.
Oh God, yeah. But I mean, like, we could do that, right? Like, there's nothing stopping us from making this kind of software that would be based on something. It's like one time I was getting gas in Six Nations, and I went into, and it's when we first started using the chips, right, on our cards. And I went in and I went to use my debit card, and the machine wasn't working. And the woman looked at it and I looked at it and it was fine. It seemed on, everything was going. And so it wouldn't work and it wouldn't work and it wouldn't work and it wouldn't work until, we're looking at it until finally she went to the switch and she hit the button and then it worked. And we cracked up because both of us, when we looked at the machine, we thought the circle was power. Two of us, right? Oh yeah, it's on a circle. Yeah, okay, But it wasn't. It was a straight line. It's like, oh, doesn't that figure?
That is my dream. Like the whole thing I'm building with Monagar, why I put all my work under Monagar is I want that to be something like, because I know I won't be around forever. And I want all that work. Like I imagine that's what's going to happen is people in my community, they're safe and they're valued and they're respected to build whatever they want to build. And I want it where if they want to build on top of what I did, they can. It's theirs. Let's do it. So if they have the conversation like this, they're like, I don't want all this linear colonization crap in here. They can take it out or just start over or whatever they want to do. Like, because it's that's more respectful instead of the way the tech industry is right now. It's well known for being very toxic and exploitive.
But we can have our own tech.
Yes,
right?
we do have our own tech.
Yeah, there's a lot of open source stuff. So it's not like we don't have access. And that's the thing. I mean, it's better in the urban centers, obviously. My community is only 3.5 hours from here, from Ottawa, but they only have internet, like fiber, like they have the fiber, but it only goes to the school and to the band office and to the health center. So anybody else can't get internet unless they get their own satellite. And this is a little community of 400 people on 59 acres in the middle of the bush. So there's not work. So who gets, it's great to retain the language, but it's crap for getting internet. So it's all about like, how do we, and this is a place where, that kind of low tech might even be a way to help get over that divide. They talk about the digital divide. Like, how do we help our communities get beyond it and get the kind of equipment and access?
And I think too, to always think about, we don't always need what, say, colonial society says we need. We really don't.
We need what works. We just need what works. And I have my cousin always said, be in the bush. And I don't know, it freaked me out. They built a summer kitchen, right? But what really freaked me out was they built a screen door. And I don't know why, but it was like, oh my God, that's a real screen door. Look at that. And he looks at me and he goes, an Indian is never stuck. And that did stick with me, because it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. You can find something to make a tool to do something to figure out whatever it is that you want to do. And I think we just need to really remind ourselves and our communities of that and make a place so that people can learn more about it, however, whichever path they get there. I mean, I've gone through the education route, but it has never been with tech. It's always been with other stuff. Still in the kitchen.
We already have our own internet. It's called Go to Your Auntie and Ask Her.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. I know. And the question I always ask is, why are we building this? Truly, why am I building this?
Yeah.
And like with the bots that I built it because I was so lonely. I was desperately lonely to keep my language and to keep practicing and thinking that way, that I built it. Does that mean I need it in the bush? Heck no. That's a tool to help me retain it so that I'm prepared for when I'm with my elders again and my people again at that time. It should not ever be used to replace like what we already have, this beautiful planet. Look at this planet, look around, go, like the pine forest is my favorite place to go. I will give up all this tech if I could live in a pine forest the rest of my days with porcupines. Like, it's just the most beautiful place with our people.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't been in the bush in a year. Can you tell?
Yes.
Oh, man. Oh. Well, do you guys have any last words you want to say to wrap up? We're at 8:30 already. You know that? Let's
I
just
think
look
that
at
just in the interim between going back to how we all interact, both after the pandemic and after Victory Day, that I think this is a decent way to be able to still connect with everyone.
Absolutely. I think so. I think for one thing, I think our networks can be so much bigger now, you know,
Yeah.
because we can access people from Seattle and from
Yeah.
Montreal and from Akwesasne, and I'm in Ottawa, and so is my friend behind the dark sign there, also in Ottawa. So, I mean, look at us. We're all from across all over, right across Turtle Island. And we can keep doing that. We can still keep building those networks. And that's why I think that resource thing is really, really important. How about you, Rose? You got any final last words?
I want to encourage anybody out there to make art and to learn more about technology so that they can create things too, but not only just make art in like the Western sense, but like just do it because it feels good. Like don't call it, like you don't need to call yourself an artist in order to make art. Like art in its creation can be very cathartic. And so I hope that people can you know, use that for healing, but also I just want to remind everyone you have a lot more power than you realize. And so like I don't want people who like hurt you or hindered you in your path or journey to keep you down for too long. Keep your head up and keep going. And yeah, like it's been a tough year for everyone, and I know we're all feeling really distant from each other, from social distancing and all. And I know I could use a hug, but yeah, like I think it's important that we, you know, are good to each other and treat each other well and treat ourselves well and don't beat ourselves too much up, beat ourselves up too much. And so yeah, just make art. Doesn't have to be good. Just yeah, make stuff.
Right on. Thanks. Kachimi Gwitch, that's so true. I like that that what you wrote there, Raven. Value the people who value you. You know, it's so important. And air hug. That's what I've been doing with my like air hug, you guys. It's the air hug. How about you, Monica? You get some last words for us?
Okay, bye. I like what Rose said. I can't say anything like that's awesome what she said, for real. Just what I need to hear. Sorry, Raven.
Just that, hey, you asked for last words.
I should know better. She's very blunt and she'll make me cry. I love that about her. Well, I want to thank you guys. I'll say a few words to close the space. Kachimigwich Jemnado, thank you. Thank you for our chance to talk together. Thank you for all the ideas that we shared, all the love and the knowledge that was shared. Help us to take these ideas into our hearts and to share them again with our families and with our communities, and help us just to make art, to express ourselves however we want to, and to help others to do the same. Kachimigwich, 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 Kachimigwich. Thank you guys. This has been totally amazing. I love it. And let's do something like this again, and let's keep talking. Let's keep this network going and build on it. So we'll do that, okay? Somehow we'll figure it out. We'll just keep in touch. And we have these Azejicigan lecture series is every month, every third Tuesday, I think. Is it the third Tuesday? I think it is. And we're going to keep bringing in more artists and having more conversations and building our network. So I think it's, I think if this is any indication, it's going to be fantastic. So Miigwech, have a good night and take care, everybody. Okay. All righty. I hate to say goodbye. I don't want to say goodbye. It's over.
Moni can say it for us.
That's right. Say it for us, Moni.
Okay, bye. Onekiwahe.
Kawaba, man.
I'm not going by first though.